Welcome to my video tip of the month for April 2024. This is a really exciting one. It's something that I have been wondering about for decades, and I finally found the answer in a recently published paper. The question is why autoimmune diseases, things like multiple sclerosis, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, Hashimoto's thyroiditis, and so many others, are more common in females than males. I'm going to start with what is autoimmunity and then tell you the answer to the question. So our immune system is assigned the task of being on the lookout for bad guys, things like viruses, bacteria, fungi, and protozoa. When they come into the body, our immune system, it goes on to high alert. It attacks and kills the invaders, usually with minimal collateral damage to human cells. But in people with autoimmune diseases, human molecules, which may have a similar appearance to the bad guys, get damaged by mistake. So why is this important to people in the chronic complex disease community? It is because autoimmune diseases are more common in females, as I've already mentioned, and so are all of the chronic complex diseases, including myalgic encephalomyelitis, chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, long COVID, connective tissue disorders, and so many others. It's because of this gender preponderance that many people have wondered whether chronic complex diseases have an autoimmune component. There are some people with these diseases who have autoantibodies. These are the calling cards of autoimmune diseases. Now, a study has just been published, led by Professor Howard Chang at Stanford University, explaining for the first time ever why women are so much more likely than men to develop autoimmune diseases. Spoiler alert, it is not due to hormones. It is genetic. Actually, it's epigenetic. Let me explain. One of the biggest differences between males and females of all species is in the sex chromosomes. Males have one X and one Y chromosome, and females have two X chromosomes. Now, the X chromosomes are much larger than the Y, and therefore have the potential to produce many more proteins. However, men and women function best when only one X chromosome is active. Therefore, to avoid producing too many critical proteins and throwing off the delicate balance of homeostasis, one X chromosome is inactivated in females in every single cell. While still at the embryo stage, each cell makes its own decision about which X chromosome we inherit two, one from our mother and one from our father. So each cell makes a decision about which one to inactivate. The coloration of calico cats, all of whom are female, is a result of this random deactivation of one X chromosome in different parts of the body. And because of this, calicos have different color patches of white, black, and red. So as I've mentioned, autoimmunity is all about epigenetics. Epigenetics is a complicated system of controls in which we are able to determine which genes are turned on and off at any given time. I explain epigenetics and how it impacts health, and especially chronic complex diseases, in Chapter 3 of my book, More Light, which is free if you sign up for my newsletter. Now, in the case of the X chromosome in females, we need to inactivate an entire chromosome, not just a few genes. So a process has been developed to enable this to happen. It's a complex called the XIST, X-I-S-T, ribonuclear protein complex. Okay, that's quite a mouthful. XIST is a piece of long, non-coding RNA Non-coding means it doesn't get transformed into protein. It actually acts in this regulatory capacity. And this cloaks one entire X chromosome to prevent the genes from that chromosome from being active. Now, this complex is usually pretty stable, but when cells die, the complex gets broken down and some of the components are released or leak outside of the cell membrane. As soon as this happens, the immune system is on alert and the B and the T cells spot these molecules. They can mistake the proteins of the exist complex as being foreign invaders. When this happens, over time, the immune cells get more and more sensitized and can begin producing autoantibodies, meaning antibodies against ourselves, directed against this exist complex. Now, since only women have an exist, because we're the only ones that have the 2X chromosomes, this process of immune sensitization only exists in women and puts us at higher risk of autoimmune disease. How did the research team of Dr. Chang figure this out? It was ingenious. They genetically modified male mice who don't normally have the exist complex by inserting the exist genes into their DNA. Then the male mice with this insertion produced the exist complex as if they were females. Then they gave these transgenic male mice an injection of an immune irritant, which is used in experimental settings to trigger an autoimmune lupus-like reaction. And sure enough, these male mice developed autoantibodies to the exist complex at the same rate as their female counterparts. And these antibodies traveled throughout the body and caused all kinds of health problems in these male mice. So in conclusion, the reason females are more likely to develop autoimmune diseases than males is because their cells contain this exist complex. It's needed, it's necessary to suppress the expression of one X chromosome. But the downside, in biology, everything usually has an upside and a downside. The downside is that when the complex is damaged, the immune system can mistake it for an invader, create antibodies against it, leading to autoimmune disease. One of the questions on my mind when I read this paper is why we only figured this out now in 2024. The transgenic mouse model has existed for decades. The researchers of this study reported that even though autoimmunity is more common in women, for several decades, researchers have only used cells from male animals as the standard of reference. Can you believe it? One has to shake one's head at the idea that diseases that are most common in women would be studied in cells from male animals. Yes, I'm shaking my head. You can read more about this paper in my April 2024 blog post. And I have an exciting sister blog about how to decrease autoimmunity and inflammation through diet. Enjoy.